across all 55 field offices. Why is it essential to maintain that scope of coverage, and what success can you point to in disrupting nation-state actors?
Our biggest threats involving nation-state actors are the PRC, Russia, and China, and they are up 33%, 83%, and 60% respectively in arrests alone this year. Those nation-state actors wish to do harm in our infrastructure, our critical infrastructure system, our energy, our water supply, and also go after and target individuals and 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 go after and target individuals.
It is your host, Emmanuel Isaiah Smith. Today's date is Monday, September 22nd, 2025. The time is 3:10 p.m. and I am in Miami, Florida. The topic of today's lecture is legal considerations. And I would like to start this video off by addressing a number of persons who I've known over the past 25 years who I strongly perceive have made their way to South Florida, particularly over the past 3 months, to see how I'm doing. But not necessarily to see how I'm doing with respect to announcing their presence, but by using the street theater mechanism and other gang stalking protocols to see how I'm doing. I think it's tacky. If you or I have not spoken or communicated in that amount of time, what makes you think it's a good idea to pop up randomly? Even the ones of you that are wearing disguises, I see right through them. I don't forget a face. I rarely forget a name. And I never forget someone's disposition towards me when I meet them or when I interact with them. These traits are part of the reason why I was able to discover, document, and expose clandestine gang stalking. Especially if you know what I do online and you're aware of EIS Media Group and Bible Discourses LLC and my lecture series, the various posts, articles, and images I've uploaded concerning gang stalking, history, politics, world affairs, etc. You did yourself a disservice by showing your face around me in such a way. You might have just contacted me on social media or through my email address, which I make public, or my phone number, which I make public, but you didn't. Your hubris drove you to pay me a little visit in my hometown of Miami, Florida, using the street theater mechanism, the very mechanism that I speak out against, as if I wasn't going to find you out. It's unfortunate you've taken this path, and I hope you make better judgment decisions for yourself, your families, and your progeny in the future. Now that that's out of the way, ladies and gentlemen, I want to talk about legal considerations. And I would like to begin this lecture by addressing any federal, state, or local law enforcement auxiliary or the Department of Defense generally with respect to my own attitudes toward the matter at hand. And mind you, ladies and gentlemen, I've done fairly extensive semi-law enforcement work myself. And quite frankly, it felt good to share in that process. I learned a lot, I accomplished a lot, and I believe I helped the officer that I was working with on that particular project. I believe he accomplished a lot, and I think the Miami-Dade Sheriff's Office came out better with respect to some of the things that go on in the Olympic Park area in Kendall, Florida, because of that project, and I'm happy about that. However, I think there may be some forces at work that are unhappy about being exposed in such a way. I think their mentality is, how on earth could such an intricate, federally sanctioned, taxpayer-funded project like gang stalking be exposed in such a way? When we joined this program, this social engineering exercise, this human behavior mechanism recording exercise, this human experimentation module, we were told, these are the gang stalkers and liaisons talking, we were told that this program would run for the next 1,000 years and no one would discover it. We were told we didn't have to pay anybody to do our bidding. All we had to do was follow the signals. Even if those signals lent themselves to causing harm to other people, all we had to do was follow the signals. That's what they told us. And we would enjoy ourselves and we'd come ahead. We were told that gang stalking was something we could teach our children and grandchildren how to do, and that their lives would be easier for it because all they got to do is follow the signals. We were told that we could get big burly half-wits, guys who can barely spell their own name, and use them as bodyguards when we're out and about. All we got to do is signal them. We were told our lives would be easier at work. We were told our lives would be easier in our academic pursuits. We were told our lives would be easier at church. We were told our lives would be easier going and coming. We were told we'd be able to find wives easier because all they got to do is signal us to the kind of woman that would be receptive to who we are as men. We were told this was a dream job, being a gang stalker. And here we got, down here in Miami, Florida, some 40-year-old guy. We don't know who he is, we don't know what he is, we don't know where he comes from or where he's going. He's just some guy in Miami, Florida. He is online telling us everything we do in detail. And not only that, he's telling the whole world what we do in detail. And he's doing it in such a way to make us look like idiots. Why is our federal government allowing us to look so ridiculous? How How could this man have possibly figured this out? It's called connecting the dots, ladies and gentlemen. I don't mind being Sherlock Holmes, at least for a while, if it means I can take down a potentially international political scourge. It's obviously federally moderated. Ladies and gentlemen, what are the legal considerations? Well, the legal considerations are this. We, the gang stalkers, we're going to blackmail Smith. We're going to tell him, all right, Smith, you figured us out. Fine. But don't think for 1 second, Smith, that you're going to get over on us. Because you know what, Smith? We know everything about you. We know all your vital statistical information. We know where you live. We know your significant other. We know who your enemies are. We know who your acquaintances are. We've analyzed your assertions on gang stalking. And there isn't a single component of your life, Smith, that we are not aware of. You know what, Smith? You're not going to take us to the ground. Because if you try to take us to the ground, we're going to try to take you to the ground. And what does Smith say to that? Bring it on. I dare anyone who has a problem with what I'm doing by invoking my First Amendment right to the United States Constitution to expose clandestine gang stalking, the quintessential political conundrum of the 21st century. Take me to court. Take me to federal court right now. Put me in front of a judge and accuse me. Say, Your Honor, we charge Emmanuel Isaiah Smith with being subversive to the sovereignty of the American Republic, namely through his words and actions on social media. That case wouldn't last 24 hours, and that I can promise you. I have the First Amendment right under the Constitution. Now, some of you might say, well, you know, if you were talking the way you're talking now in other countries that don't have the freedom of speech, you know what the governments of those countries would do to you, Smith? No, I don't know what those countries would do to me, but I don't give a rat's ass. I don't live in any other country. I live in the United States of America, and the framers of the United States Constitution had the wisdom and the foresight to include a stipulation in there called the First Amendment to the United States Constitution, where all citizens have the right to free speech. And the press here, the media, has the right to cover any story they want and publish it without fear of retaliation or recourse. The reason that was wise is because the framers of the United States Constitution knew that they were formulating guidelines for a federal government of a brand new country. And they knew when they were writing these documents, the Magna Carta, the Declaration of Independence, the United States Constitution, the Bill of Rights, they knew ahead of time when they were formulating these documents that there was always the possibility of the abuse of power. History has shown us, and I'm talking going back 10,000 years, history has shown us, ladies and gentlemen, that abuses of power can take place in government. And before organized governments were formed and we had kingdoms and empires, abuses of powers took place in those kingdoms and empires. Abuses of power can be catastrophic for people, for institutions, for nation states, for governments, for countries, for empires. Sometimes there are deleterious persons who assume roles where they assume power. The United States Constitution gives the people a shield against the abuse of power. The two most potent shields that the framers of the Constitution have given the people are freedom of speech and the right to bear arms. These tools are your shields against government abuse and against abuses against people by companies and other people. Think of the First Amendment to the Constitution as your sword and the Second Amendment to the Constitution as your shield. With these administrative weapons, these constitutional weapons, these legislative weapons, you can defend yourself against any tyranny, any threat, any abuse, any corruption. So long as you exercise those rights, to the best of your ability. Clandestine gang stalking ain't something I went to a courthouse and signed up for. I didn't go to my local courthouse and go to the clerk and say, hey, I hear there's a program called clandestine gang stalking going around. It sounds like fun. Here's my driver's license. I want to sign up. No, it just settled in one day. And I looked around me and people were sort of dancing to a tune. But this tune has a name. It's called synchronization. And synchronization has a protocol, and that protocol is called signaling. Signaling has a ground zero, and those ground zeros are called liaisons. And the people that participate otherwise are useful idiot gang stalkers. Who knows why they do what they do? All they do is run around town annoying the hell out of people. What I'd like to see is I would like to see gang stalking entered into the U.S. legal code as a crime. Something that's punishable with jail time. I mean, you should see some of the stuff stalkers are doing here in the Miami-Dade, Florida area. This is guerrilla warfare being waged on U.S. citizens by stalkers here. The manner of covert war that was waged against my person in Ohio was equally as deleterious, but the stuff they're doing here in Miami-Dade, Florida is absolutely outrageous. Okay, they are doing real-time guerrilla warfare tactics here. All right, these guys are putting poisonous substances in water bottles and flinging them at people as they ride past the victim on a motor scooter. They're putting feces in people's food. They're organizing germ spreading modules here. They're hacking people's computers and emails so that they know where people are going. They're hacking phone calls and conversations to find out more about people. They're doing some of this same kind of stuff to children here as well. Ultimately, ladies and gentlemen, I would need a camera of some kind embedded in my clothes or my glasses, my sunglasses. I don't wear eyeglasses. Unless I see a pair that I think are really nice, then I might wear them just as an accessory. But I don't wear eyeglasses. I have perfect vision. I see everything that's going on around me at all times. Now, when you talk about a rigged democracy, what comes to mind? Well, let's look at some of the accusations of a rigged democracy that we've seen over the past couple of years. President Donald J. Trump, someone who I personally have found to have a great deal of personal fortitude, was jailed in Fulton County, Georgia, if I'm not mistaken, along with 50 other officials of his for allegedly rigging votes. In the last election. Donald Trump, the president, was jailed. What that says to me is that election integrity is something that's taken very seriously in this country. That's what that tells me. That tells me, for one, elections are supposed to be fair and square, as they say. Or, if you're gonna rig an election, you're gonna have to do a hell of a lot better job than he did. Because he was caught for what he did, or was alleged to have done, him and his associates. Now, gang stalking also is a force for the undue rigging of a meritocracy. And that's what an election is supposed to represent, ladies and gentlemen. It's supposed to represent a meritocracy. That's what an election is supposed to represent. It's supposed to represent the ability for opposing sides in a contest to compete in that contest, and the best person wins based on the rules. That's what the concept of a meritocracy is. There are rules. There's a competition. There are opposing sides to that competition. And the person who is better prepared, the person who is more skilled, the person who better executes their game plan, and the person who exhibits the most fortitude is supposed to win that contest. There are not supposed to be any third-party actors interfering with the results of that contest. Okay? Let's take a chess championship, for example. Let's say they have a chess championship. It's for the world chess champions. A lot of these contests are held in Europe, so let's say this year's championship is held in Sweden. You got side A and your side B. One of the chess competitors is from England. The other chess competitor is from Russia. They meet in a chess championship. It's supposed to be best of 7. Whoever wins 4 games the quickest wins the chess championship. So let's say after 2 games apiece, it's tied. Either party has to win the next 2 games. Let's say one of the competitors starts cheating. Let's say one of the competitors starts using Morse code, using his foot or using his hand on the table to signal somebody in the audience who has on their phone a chess computer. And the person in the audience who has the chess computer has a vibrating device on his leg. And he uses Morse code, using taps of the foot, to signal one of the chess players who has a vibrating device on his leg And through Morse code, the person in the audience who has arranged the pieces on the board the exact way they are in the game on a chess computer that is on his phone gets the best next move on that chess computer, and he can signal using Morse code and the vibrating device on his leg the chess contestant what the best next move is based on this chess computer's recommendation. And this through a vibrating device on the chess competitor's leg. Let's say one of the judges is paid off not to observe this tapping motion, because tapping motions in chess are considered suspicious if a person is constantly tapping their hand on a table. Let's say one of the judges was paid off to turn their head. And the cheater won. That robs the game of chess. It robs the audience, and it robs the contestants of their ability to know who the best chess player in the world really is. That's all gang stalking is. It's a bunch of useful idiots signaling each other to try and get ahead. And yeah, they use intimidation. Yeah, they use germ spreading and sickness generation. Yeah, they use child abuse. Yeah, they use violence. Yeah, they use murder. Yeah, they use derived car accidents. Yeah, they use assassins and hitmen. Yeah, they use data interception. Yeah, they use illegal search and seizure. All in the name of national security, because the liaisons that get the action started are government affiliated or semi-government affiliated, and know they can get away with this stuff because it's hard to detect by the human eye generally. Which brings me back to the beginning premise. How did this Emmanuel Isaiah Smith guy, the one talking to you right now, figure out gang stalking so conclusively? Well, look at it as a game of chess. I watched my opponent's moves and I made better moves. The moves I made, my opponent wasn't able to match them. Furthermore, gang stalking is a sloppily implemented product. It uses a lot of thugs and nitwits and half-wits and degenerates and idiots and jealous, envious people and people who have something to prove. I call them cowboys. Now, mind you, I'm from Knoxville, Tennessee, and I've ridden a horse or two myself, and I respect the history of cowboys in this country. Plus, my significant other loves the Dallas Cowboys, which is her favorite NFL team, as she is born in Dallas, Texas, born and raised. But they have another name for a cowboy. That's some guy with something to prove all the damn time. Someone who is constantly getting in somebody's face, trying to look like something. And you know what, ladies and gentlemen, if you look at history, sometimes justice wins and sometimes it does not. But justice won this time. Even if the United States federal government never acknowledges gang stalking for fear of the embarrassment it would cause this country, justice won. Because this thing was exposed. And now the entire human race has at least one person namely myself, whose work they can look at and observe and research and study to find out how such a covert attack mechanism and social engineering protocol operates, how to spot it. Where it comes from, where it's going. Some of you may ask, Mr. Smith, where is it? Gang stalking as a product, where is it going? Well, I've said in previous lectures, you should go back and look at my ideal population lectures and my population control lecture. That's ultimately what gang stalking is going to evolve into. Okay? It's going to evolve into a population control mechanism where select members of society are allowed to manipulate and control the trajectory of targeted populations. That's it. It uses the power of the federal government of the United States to allow certain segments of the population to invariably control other parts of the population secretly. That's it. And if some point federal auxiliaries of the United States determine who shall live, who shall give birth, whose genes are good enough to pass on to the next generation, and whose genes are not good enough to pass on to the next generation. Products like gang stalking would be used to determine that, and products like gang stalking would be used to make sure that people of this segment of the population do not reproduce, and people of this segment of the population do reproduce. You see, there's a false narrative of compliance with constitutional precepts going on here. You signal useful idiots to a targeted person with the intent of getting them sick with something, and you turn around and say what we do is not illegal? What are you, an idiot? I can see it's illegal. It's unconstitutional. My significant other, who doesn't see nearly as much as I do with respect to clandestine operations, she knows it's unconstitutional. And she's a patriot. So it's like this. Are you ready to look me in my face? It doesn't have to be in person. A lot of you stalkers are scared of your own damn shadows. That's why you have to use a federally sanctioned operation like gang stalking to get close to people like me so you can perpetrate acts of domestic terrorism like disease spreading, airborne bacteria contamination, and all that other garbage y'all do. I don't know, what are you guys calling it these days? What are you stalkers calling it this? What are you stalkers calling it these days? Bacteria flinging? I'm sure you got a name for it. want people who are hostile agitators to get close enough to me to disrupt my trajectory through time and space. And you're using the power of the state to accomplish that. That's it. Who referred me to auxiliary A, B, and C? So that I'd be put in a gang stalking campaign? I don't know. Could have been a teacher, could have been a family member, could have been a pastor, could have been anybody. I just don't know. But I know there is a referral process. If a person generates enough bad, we'll call them derogatory records on their name, they can wind up in a gang stalking campaign overnight. I just don't know. But now that I'm in this gang stalking campaign, I know exactly how the hell it works. And I can communicate how it works to a worldwide audience. And quite frankly, I don't know that anyone in the Department of Defense or Department of Justice have talked about this publicly, but I did catch something in FBI Director Kash Patel's Senate hearings in which he was grilled mostly by Democratic senators on some of the decisions he's made as FBI director. He was speaking to one of the senators. I think it was Senator Lee. And he used the phrase target individuals. Although he didn't use it in the sense that I use it, or that people who research gang stalking used it. He used it in reference to something else. But he used the phrase, or we'll call it the moniker, target individual. He used that. And I heard it. And I don't know if any of the other senators caught it, but it was neat to hear the director of the FBI use that phrase, target individual, in a Senate meeting or in a Senate hearing. The dynamic of it was energizing. It would have been nice for the director to elaborate a little bit more. But ultimately, ladies and gentlemen, it was brought out of him. The contentious nature of those hearings brought that out of him. He probably knows exactly what a targeted individual is. He probably knows what gang stalking is. But it's probably a top secret operation. It's probably something that he can't talk about legally. And why? Well, it appears to me that there is a gang stalking enterprise out there. And if gang stalking were to be exposed or talked about even by Congress, that could threaten some of the money that's running through this thing. All of the weapons technology that's used in gang stalking campaigns against targeted individuals by federal liaisons, Stingray devices, Vercator technology, Gyrotron technology, hydrogel technology, ultra-low frequency technology, gamma ray frequency technology, X-ray technology. voice of God technology, where ultra low frequency radiation is used on a person to make them feel as if the voice of God is talking to them, I would not doubt any second that the organized religious establishment in this country, okay, the ones that do participate in gang stalking, use that on people. Make them feel like it's the voice of God they're hearing. Hello, my child. This is Yahweh, the creator of heaven and earth. I am speaking to you through my son, Jesus Christ, by the power of the Holy Spirit. Tomorrow, when you walk outside your door, you're going to see somebody give you a signal. You are to take that signal and answer it in kind in the name of my son, Jesus Christ. All the while, it's some jerk who is a liaison, who has access to that ultra low frequency technology. He's manipulating the electronic synapses responses in your brain, making you feel like you're hearing voices, telling you to take signals and participate in gang stalking. Any John Doe or Jane Doe off the street would not know that. They'd be like, oh, I just heard from God. Yes, I'll join the gang stalking campaign. There are pastors sitting in some office. You know what? I heard a weird voice too. Told me to make a hard left in my Jeep Grand Cherokee into a shopping mall, and I ran some guy right over. Then that voice appeared to me again and said, keep going, don't worry, that person was an emissary of Satan, just keep right on going. And that's what I did too. Ended up getting charged with attempted vehicular manslaughter, but hey, at least I heard from God. Ladies and gentlemen, the holistic picture of the gang stalking mechanism must be painted. And I'm the Michelangelo. I'm the one who is bringing you this message in good faith. Not just for my own benefit, but for the benefit of my progeny. I don't want my sons to be targeted individuals. I don't want my grandkids to be targeted individuals either. It's difficult to establish yourself in society where everywhere you go, someone's trying to run you over with a 5,000-pound truck. And they don't care. All right, you guys hear that in the background? Okay, I'm part of the millennial generation. Okay, I know exactly who that is rapping. That's Christopher Wallace. He's a rapper who was very popular in the mid-90s. He was shot dead by an undercover police officer in 1997. Gang stalkers use his music and the music of a lot of entertainers who have been shot dead around me. Okay, sometimes they do it while I'm doing my lectures. That is a synchronized noise harassment mechanism. Okay, I don't know if that's a threat of some kind, but it's not a coincidence that as I'm doing my lecture, music from that particular music artist is playing in the background. It's a warning. Well, listen, scumbag, whoever arranged that, it says a lot about you and your lack of personal fortitude to have somebody drive past me in traffic playing that music, if it's a threat, and look, he's driving off down the street now. That's a Weasley cowardly thing to do. And I hear that music a lot. And the reason I find it peculiar is because the man passed away 30 years ago. Okay, I don't know a whole bunch of people that blast his music in cars these days. Thank you for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen.